It's a Mailbag Friday on the podcast. Going to answer a variety of questions, including some about how the Braves should handle resting players down the stretch. What does that look like? Got some about the offseason as well. We got a lot to cover on today's episode of Locked On Braves, so let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at shorts.ball. Make sure you follow the podcast there as well at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, or feedback that you have for the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We're so close to 7,000 subscribers, trying to reach that by the postseason. I think we're about 30, 40 away from getting that done. If you're doing that, or if you're there already and watching this video, hit that thumbs up button. I promise you it helps out the video when you do that. And that's just one way that you can support us here at Locked On Braves. Thank you so much for all of you who do support me here and make Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Big shout out to Randy Hibbs, Lori Lee, GA, Elmo, Whitdog, and Jeffrey Humphreys, who let me know on the last podcast that they are an everydayer. If you're an everydayer, let me know down in the comment section below. Another way you can help support the show, utilize one of our many great sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $5 and to get $200 in bonus bet. Bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. All right, we got a busy podcast as we typically do on Fridays. It's our mailbag episode. We got a wide range of questions as we typically do, but a lot of them focusing on how the Braves are going to handle things down the stretch. So again, with a lot of questions, and thank you so much as always for submitting those. They're always great. But I'm going to go ahead and go through these. I haven't really prepped on a lot of these, so forgive me if I need to do a little bit of research while I go through some of these questions because there's just so many of them. I didn't have time to prep for all of them. But Joey Milby has a couple here. He says, does Oakland have any young studs we should keep an eye on for next season? I don't think so. I think we've pretty much gotten everything that they have to offer right now, unless they want to start giving us some of our prospects back. But I don't see a deal happening with Oakland this offseason unless it's for some type of pitcher, reliever maybe. But yeah, I think everybody has pretty much gotten everything out of Oakland that they could have. Another one from Joey, non-Braves, but the AL looks like a crapshoot. The Rays, Orioles, Astros, Rangers, and Mariners have all looked like the class of the league at times, but also at times like teams that won't make the playoffs. Who do you think makes it into the playoffs, and who is your favorite to win it? And that's a good question. Something I was thinking about the other day. I don't know who really scares me the most out of the American League. I guess with the way the Astros are playing right now and they're the defending champs, if they get on a roll, I think maybe they're the team that scares me the most. Mariners pitching, I think, could be really scary. They could be, one of the few pitching staffs that I think might be able to slow down this Braves offense for, 3-4 games in a series. So I think they scare me a little bit. I don't know that the Orioles or Rays scare me all that much in a 7-game series. I just don't know that they have the pitching. The Rays have lost, just been glutton in their pitching staff this year. It's just, tough for them. And I don't think the Orioles pitching staff's necessarily good enough to hold down the Braves. So I don't know that either one of those two teams scare me a lot, even though they're leading the American League. I think if I had to pick right now with the way the Astros are playing and the Mariners too, as hot as they are, they may be the two most dangerous teams. And then the Rangers, I think they're maybe the one team that has the offense that could keep up with the Braves. So maybe one of those AL West teams, everybody looking to the Orioles and Rays because they have the best record. But I think maybe one of those AL West teams, if they get hot at the right time, might be the scariest opponent from the American League. And Joey also asked, if this is the last go-around for Morton, do you think Alex brings in a big name or even anyone to replace him? We could go with Fried, Strider, Elder, and then two of Wright, Soroka, Vines, Winans, AJ Smith-Shawver, Schuster at some point, Schwellenbach, Waldrop, and or Ian Anderson. So if Morton walks, I think, and I haven't looked to see who's available on the market. If Morton does decide to hang it up, I think I think Alex would go out and get another veteran. It's just always kind of been the thing that he's done in Atlanta. They haven't always worked out as good as Charlie Morton has, but I would not be surprised if he went out and got a veteran, on a 1-2 year deal. I'm thinking, I don't know if Clayton Kershaw would ever leave the Dodgers. I think his contract's up, but maybe something like that. Somebody towards the end of their career, you give them a high, AAV 15, 20 million for a 1-year deal, maybe a 2-year deal or 1 year with an option, something like that. It would not surprise me if Alex went out and still did something like that if Morton were to leave. Cavs Buckeye says, how can the Braves utilize Brad Hand effectively in a 3-batter minimum world? And I responded to this on Twitter for realizing it was a mailbag question, but the simple answer is you bring him in with 2 outs in an inning to face a lefty who the other team is not going to take out. And then at that point, Brad Hand has to get that lefty out because you really don't want him facing a righty. You could also, if it's in the 5th, 6th inning, where teams are probably less likely to make, a lot of changes and a lot of pinch hitters in the middle of the game, you could bring him in an inning where maybe a couple of lefties are coming up to get through that inning facing a couple of lefties. I think that's one way that you could use him, but I see them mostly using him, to get a big lefty out to end an inning. So that's how I think you most effectively use Brad Hand. Coach Panone's film supplier says, if you were Alex Anthopoulos, you only have 5 moves picking up options, trades, free agent signings to make this offseason. What are they? I pick up the Charlie Morton option. I know maybe some people might not agree with that, but if Morton wants to come back, that's what I do. As far as trades and free agent signings, I haven't really looked that far ahead. I'll go ahead and tell you this now. I think it's going to be a pretty boring offseason for the Braves. I don't think there's going to be a lot of work to do. If Morton does walk, then I think that maybe the biggest thing is just replacing Morton with another veteran. So I don't think there's going to be a lot to do this offseason. I think it would be primarily just bringing in, added depth, maybe bringing in some more depth in the starting rotation, as we saw how much that's needed this year. So I don't think there's a lot of moves to make this year. I'd be surprised if they make 5 significant moves. There are a lot of options. You got Rosario. They already took care of the Travis d'Arnaud one. You got Charlie Morton we talked about already. So they do have a lot of, player options, team options, Kirby Yates, that they have to make decisions on. But outside of that, I don't see them making too many big splashes, whether through free agency or trades this offseason. But we'll obviously get more into that once the season wraps up. Bellfire says, what would manager Jake do to have his team ready to go for the divisional round of the playoffs after a couple of weeks of not as meaningful games and a week of no games? And this is the big question right now. And again, it's something we've talked about on here before and discussed a lot. And I don't think anybody has the perfect answer to it. We've been talking about this for years, as far as I can remember covering baseball. If it were me and you're asking manager Jake, what would I do? I would take these next 2 weeks before the final week of the season, and I would rest guys. I'd give Riley a day off. I'd give Olsen a day off if he's willing. I'd take, Arcia. I'd give everybody a day off. I would do that over the next week or two. And I'd put Ronald and Olsen in the DH spot, wherever I could. If they wanted to keep their 162 game streak intact, I'd put them in the DH spot several times over the last few weeks. But for the next 2 weeks, that's what I would do. I would rotate, giving guys days off here and there to get them rested. That full week before the end of the season, I play everybody every day. I want them getting as many as at bats to make sure that they have their timing as much as they can before that full week off. That full week off, what I would do, manager Jake here, I'd play simulated games. I'd call up guys from the minor leagues, whatever it took. I'd have Spencer Strider. I wrote an article on Braves yesterday on how I think they should handle the rotation the rest of the way to get guys ready and also get them rested for the postseason. Essentially skipping them. I think there's a question about this, so I'm not going to answer it here, but making sure that Max Fried's lined up to start the last game of the year. If that's the case, then Strider and Morton almost have to throw, some sort of live simulated game during that off week. Otherwise, they're going to have almost 2 weeks off between the end of the regular season, or not 2 weeks. It'd be about 10 days between their final start in the regular season till their start in the NLDS. That's just too much time in my mind, with a player or a pitcher, getting out of routine and not pitching. So I think during those off days, I'd have my starters throw in a simulated game. I'd have my batters facing them, and, in live BP. I'd call up some of the young guys, who maybe need some more innings from the minor league level to throw live, BP to these guys, something to simulate game experience to keep their timing. That's how I would handle it. You got the day, the season ends on that Sunday, maybe you give them off day on that Monday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm playing simulated games every day. Then maybe give them another off day on Friday, and then the NLDS starts on that Friday, or on that Saturday, which is just absurd. I don't want to go into, my whole soapbox here about how the off days for this playoff format are just hideous and just terrible. There just cannot be that many off days between the end of the regular season and when the postseason starts. They got to find a way to narrow that down, but that's how I would handle it. I'd take those Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'd play simulated games. I'd have Strider, Morton, Elder, pitch in those simulated games. I'd have them hit all my hitters, facing live batting practice, trying as much as possible to keep that timing in check for hitters and to keep pitchers, on schedule as well, so that they don't get rusty. So that's how I would handle it. And I think that's going to be the biggest key for Brian Snitker and the Braves here down the stretch. How do they decide to handle it? What's their game plan? So great question there. Again, I don't know that anybody has the perfect answer to it, but that's how I would handle it. Let me know if you agree or what you would do during this long stretch that the Braves have playing, somewhat meaningless games, and then that long, break they have between the regular season and the postseason. All right, got a lot more questions to get to, covering a variety of different topics. We'll discuss those here next. Don't get caught unprepared when disaster strikes. Make sure you have emergency medication ready. Jase Medical can help you be prepared for those moments. Their Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. I ordered mine the other day. The process is simple. All it takes to get a Jase case is to fill out a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with a board-certified physician. Everyone should be empowered to take care of themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. Jase handles everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Braves will be back in action on Friday at 6:40 p.m. Eastern as they take on the Miami Marlins. Catch every pitch of the Braves' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Braves. Jumping back into your questions, Cavs Buckeyes says, can we get Ronald 2 to 4 starts at DH a week down the stretch? I need 3 more bombs from him, but want to get him off his feet before the playoffs. Don't think it would be a bad thing to get Acuña some rest. I agree, and we kind of discussed that with the last question. I'd have Ronald in that DH spot, once or twice a week at least, to get him off his feet and allow him to continue to pile up those numbers that, I think he wants to get to. We all want to see him get to help him also in that MVP race. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I want to see him at least get those 3 more bombs at that 40 mark. If he were to do that, maybe then we talk about giving him an off day. But I think at the very least, he needs to be in that DH spot, several times a week here down the stretch. Ron Chung, will Kyle have enough starts to be ready for the postseason? How soon do you think Jesse Chavez will be back? Jesse Chavez struck out the side at Gwinnett last night, so I think he is certainly, it's his second appearance. He's probably going to need at least 2 more and maybe have to go back-to-back days. But I think he could be back, realistically next week sometime. We'll see if they actually give him a little bit more leash because he's been out. Or not leash, but say if they actually give him a little bit more time because he's been out for so long that, usually those take a little bit longer rehab stints to come back. As for Kyle Wright, will he have enough starts to be ready for the postseason? It's a 2-part answer to this. Yes, I think he'll have enough starts to be ready to be on the postseason roster. how those starts go will determine what type of role he has on the postseason roster. But I think he'll have enough innings and starts under his belt to be, stretched out, back ready to be on the postseason roster. But again, how he looks and how that goes will determine what type of role that he has. All right, this next one's one that I'm going to have to do some research on here for just a second, so bear with me. But this one coming from Baltimore Braves fans, he says, are any of the following pitchers under contract next season, and would you want them back? Do any still have options? So give me just a second. Let me look up Braves future payroll on Baseball Reference, and I'll look up some of these pitchers because he references a lot of them, and I just can't keep up with who all is under contract. But the first one is Nick Anderson, and my understanding with Nick Anderson is that it was a 1-year deal that they brought him in on, so I believe he is a free agent after the season. So I don't think the Braves will be bringing him back. Michael Tonkin is still under control of arbitration, but he is out of options. I do know he is out of options. So Braves would have to keep him on, keep him on the big league roster, or they could lose him. Alan Winans, he's under, arbitration control for a while. Ben Heller is as well, but I think he is out of options after this season. I think they've used the last of his options. Jackson Stevens, they signed him to a minor league deal for this year. So they'd have to re-sign him again after the season. I believe Baseball Reference shows him still under arbitration. Chirinos is still under arbitration, but out of options. Colby Allard, I believe, is out of options at this time, but still under team control. Litke, I'm not sure on Litke. I think he is out of options. He's gone after the season, Lucas Litke. So as far as those guys that I would bring back, if you could get Nick Anderson back for another year, I would. Tonkin could come or go. I think he's replaceable. Winans is there as good depth. I would definitely hang on to him. Heller as well. I think he's shown some good stuff. Stevens, can come or go. Great guy, great clubhouse guy, but can be replaced. Chirinos can go, in my opinion. Allard there, is good minor league depth, but if he's out of options, I don't know that you can hang on to him on the 40-man roster. So yeah, a lot of decisions with those guys. I think all those guys are replaceable, but they're there for great depth. I would like to see more of Winans and see him get more of an opportunity in the rotation. Cass Buckeye says it seems like opposing fans hate Acuña an unhealthy amount. Why? I get disliking rivals, but the stuff you see about him said casually is absurd. I don't understand it, and I think it's hit or miss. I think a lot of people love Ronald Acuña Jr. I mean, he got the most votes for the All-Star game. I mean, those aren't all just coming from Braves fans. That's coming from fans who recognize he's the best player in the game. Now, maybe they recognize he's the best player, but they still don't like him and don't like rooting for him. It's difficult as a Braves fan to say because, look, Ronald is, he has a flair, and that can rub people the wrong way, with all his celebrations on his home run trots, all of that. I could get how that could rub some people the wrong way. It'd be somewhat hypocritical for me to sit here and say that, I don't understand how people don't like that. And then I was one of those guys that hated Bryce Harper for a while for doing that type of stuff. And now, Ronald's kind of changed my tune on that and, let the kids just have fun. So I think it's probably, some of that. I think if Acuña were on another team, if he were on, say he were on the Mets, I think Braves fans would be booing him just as hard and hating on him just as much, even if they do respect and realize how great of a talent he is. So I think that's all, part of it. And look, Braves fans are going to have to get used to being hated because that's what just happens when you're good. And the Braves are good right now. And fans are going to start hating that. They hate success. It's why everybody hates the Yankees because they've had so much success. It really has nothing to do with the players or the team in general. It's just everybody hates the Yankees because you're supposed to, because they've been so good for so long. Everybody hates the Astros right now for other reasons, but also just because they've been so good and they've had so much success. So with success comes, people wanting to tear you down and just hate on you for no real good reason. other than they're just jealous. So Braves fans, Acuña in general, are going to start getting a lot of that. Hunter said, should Snit make Ronnie DH every day until the playoffs start or give him days off? We talked about that. I definitely think he should get some days at the DH spot. Eric8504 says, teams have been running on us a lot lately. Do you think the pitching staff is not doing a good job holding on the runners? How can we fix that before the postseason? Yes, I think a lot of the stolen bases have to do with pitchers not being great, particularly the relievers not being great at holding runners on. I also think anytime Travis d'Arnaud is back there, teams are more apt to run wild, and he's been catching a lot of games more recently. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's teams don't respect Travis d'Arnaud's arm behind the plate, and I think pitchers, particularly the relievers, just do not do a good job of holding runners on. I think Sean Murphy's going to catch every game in the postseason, so I think that's going to be one way to help that a little bit. Eric also said, I believe in the postseason, we should put Wright and AJ in the bullpen. For example, if Morton has to be pulled in the third inning, Wright or AJ can get you 3 innings, which would help the bullpen. What are your thoughts? I'm right there with you. And I've said that as much over the last couple of podcasts or recently. I would have both of those guys in the bullpen, to kind of bridge that gap. If, somebody gets hurt early or somebody just doesn't have it that day, you can bring in a Wright, you can bring in an AJ Smith-Shawver. They can give you multiple innings to kind of save the bullpen and hopefully keep you in a game if needed to, and just bridge that gap to the back end. So I'm definitely on board with that. Justin, who do you see as the last reliever on the postseason roster? I think it might be Jesse Chavez at this point. If he's able to come back, I think he could slip in, that maybe one of that last spot. I think he's not a guy that's necessarily a lock at this point, just because he may need more time to prove himself back at the big league level after his rehab stint ends. So I think he may be that last guy on right now. I wanted to see AJ Smith-Shawver on there. I know we just talked about it, but they just optioned him without even using him and giving him an opportunity. And so now they can't bring him up for 15 days. So I don't know that he is on the postseason roster or even going to be given that opportunity. We talked about Kyle Wright. I think maybe he's on there as well. So those are probably the last couple of guys you're looking at putting on that roster. Pedro says, should Snitker consider skipping any of Fried, Strider, and Morton next week against the Phillies because of the fact the Braves may play them again in the DS 2 weeks later, 3 times in 1 month span? Yes. So this is what I wrote about on Braves Today yesterday. I would skip all 3 of them in this upcoming Phillies series, which is when they would be on rotation to pitch again. I would not pitch them against the Phillies again. Facing a team 3 times in a 4-week span, that heavily, in my opinion, favors the hitters when they're seeing pitchers that much, that frequently. So I would skip them in this upcoming Phillies series. I throw Kyle Wright, I throw a bullpen game, I throw Bryce Elder, but I would not throw Strider, Morton, or Fried in that series. I'm right there on board with you in that line of thinking. Nicholas Petrilli says, would you trade AJ Smith-Shawver, Vaughn Grissom, and Owen Murphy for Mike Trout this offseason if we don't sign Max Fried? I don't know what Max Fried really, I don't know how that comes into the equation for trading for Mike Trout. I would say no. First of all, I don't even know if that's enough for Mike Trout. I don't know what his value is at this point, but that's a lot of money. If money's not a concern, I'd probably do that deal in a heartbeat, even though I know Trout's been dealing with a lot of injuries lately, but I would do that deal if money's not an option, but I think money is an option. So I don't think that trade happens. And I still don't even know if that's enough for Mike Trout. I don't know what the value of him is right now. And I think you'd probably have to do some really good digging on the medicals to see, how because that contract is really long and it's a lot of money. I think that's a type of contract that could cripple a franchise making that type of deal. Game acknowledger, what can Atlanta do to help ensure playoff matchup success? Really taking that last week and strategizing, who you could be going up against if you have a good idea at that point, what type of players, you need against the team starting pitching. But that last week, setting up the rotation and who, benefits the most. Can you get another lefty? If you're facing the Phillies and they got some good lefties, is there another lefty option for the bullpen that you can find at this point? So I think, that's what the Braves need to be looking to do down the stretch. Jeff Conrad, not that the front office would like to listen to anyone like us, but what are your ideas you have to keep the Braves sharp over the break? We already discuss that. I'd play sim games Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday during those off days. Ghost of 1995. It's a little early to talk about Riley and Harris being Hall of Famers. You assume Snitker is in the Hall. Probably not. I don't think his managerial career is going to be long enough for him to get in the Major League Hall of Fame. I think he'll be in the Braves, Hall of Fame for sure, especially if he wins another World Series. But I don't know if Snitker's run as a big league manager would be long enough for him to get, Major League, Hall of Fame consideration. So not sure about that unless he wins maybe 3 more or 2 more World Series, so 3 in total. Then maybe he gets some consideration there. I got a couple from YouTube as well that I wanted to get to. Darren Harris, could we get a live postcast with you and Grant? Would love to have conversation in the comments with you guys. Problem with that is those are supposed to be pretty short, 15-minute postcast, and when you bring in a live audience, it really kind of draws that out. I do expect, in the postseason, or in the offseason rather, I'll go back to doing live podcasts, and I'll have Grant on sometime, so maybe we can do that then. Clashley says, do you think realistically Jesse Chavez will have enough time to get some reps in the final stretch and make the postseason roster? I do. If he keeps pitching every other day at the AAA level, so maybe one more time this weekend, maybe pitches again on Saturday and then pitches again, next Monday or Tuesday. I think he has to get back-to-back days in. And I think he could, realistically have enough time to come back up for, the end of the regular season and get a spot on the postseason. Charles Barrera, how long do you think the alternating catchers will continue? Would love to see one of the 2 catchers catch 5 before the postseason. There's another point I think I made earlier this week. That last series of the season, I have Sean Murphy catching every day. They probably won't do that, but if he is your guy in the postseason and he's going to be catching every day, like I think he will, that last week, I have him catching pretty much every day. And I do think that has hurt a little bit, them continuing to flip-flop and go back and forth. I think that's hurt both guys offensively, but hopefully it has kept them fresh for the postseason run here. But in my mind, if Murphy's your guy, you take that last week and he starts pretty much every day. Maybe you take him out late, the last game of the season, but I'm right there with you in that. I'd have one of them, whichever one's going to be your guy. I think it's Murphy. I'd have them catching every day. Leland Hurt says, will the rosters expand again for the postseason? Do you think we'll see Chavez in postseason play? No, in fact, they'll go back down to 26-man rosters for the postseason. And I do think Chavez, as we said earlier, I think could be the last man in. Mike Brown, who's our best choice for a setup man for the 8th inning? I think it's either Jimenez or Minter. You play the matchups in the 7th or 8th. If the top of the order is coming up in the 7th inning and you have, a lot of lefties at the top of that order, I go with AJ Minter there in the 7th and then save Jimenez for the right and for the 8th and vice versa. So I think it just depends on matchups, whether Minter pitches the 7th or the 8th inning. Coach Larry says, do you think Kyle Wright makes the postseason roster? I do. I just don't know what capacity yet, if it's a starter or reliever. RJS 2303 says, who's your favorite Brave of all time? That would be either Andrelton Simmons or Rafael Furcal, as I love defense and I love shortstops, hence my social media name, Shortstop Ball. If Max Fried leaves, who takes his spot? I think Spencer Strider becomes your ace. I don't know that you can replace Max Fried. What other organization have as many Hall of Fame snubs as the Braves with Andrew and Dell chief among them? I don't know. I don't pay enough attention to Hall of Fame snubs, but definitely Andrew better get in on this next ballot. I'll be really upset if he doesn't get in this next time around. So those are all the questions this week. Sorry if I ran through those kind of quickly, but wanted to get to all of them if I could, and we did. So thank you so much for submitting all those questions. Next, we'll turn our attention back to the field where the Braves will be taking on the Marlins, who are fighting for a playoff spot on Friday night. We'll discuss that next. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. Also, visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Braves and Marlins will kick off a 3-game series on Friday night at 6:40 p.m. Eastern. Catch every pitch of the Braves' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Braves. On Friday night, it'll be Bryce Elder versus the veteran Johnny Cueto. Cueto's given up at least 3 runs in his last 6 starts, so hopefully the Braves offense can take advantage of that, and he can be kind of tricky sometimes with that hesitation he has in his windup, but Braves are obviously familiar with him as he's a veteran, and hopefully they can get to him. Bryce Elder had a lot of success down the stretch last year against the Marlins. I know their offense has been struggling lately, so hopefully he can have a lot of success there, and the Braves can maybe knock out a division opponent out of the postseason. The Marlins are right there on the cusp in the NL wild card, so they're still playing for something. Again, hopefully that keeps the Braves engaged. Hopefully Ronald can do what he does against the Marlins and just go off and put up some big numbers there. That's what I'm looking forward to this weekend. Me and Grant will have the postcast coming for you over at Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube and in your Locked On Braves podcast feed. So look out for that if anything crazy does happen this weekend, but hoping for a good one for the Braves, taking on a division rival who has a lot to play for, and looking for Ronald Acuña Jr. to have a big series as well. And looking forward to seeing Bryce Elder pitch. Is again, I think he's going to be that 4th man in the postseason rotation, so need to see him looking sharp here down the stretch. Again, that game will start at 6:40 p.m. Eastern on Friday. Catch every pitch of the Braves' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Braves. That will do it for this episode of the Locked On Braves. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of each and every day. Follow us on social media at LockedOn_Braves or follow me at shorts.ball. Also, make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.